"What in the world are you
What
doing
the
with my
hell are
son?"
you doing with
yelled
my
Mr.
son?
Mike, his heart thumping like a drum against his ribs as he stood frozen in the doorway. Sarah, the helper he'd hired just 3 weeks ago, was sitting in the comfy rocking chair, holding his tiny 5-month-old baby, Alex, and feeding him milk from herself. Sarah's eyes popped open wide, and her whole body became super still. Carefully, she gently moved Alex away and hugged him close. "Mr. Mike, please let me tell you why," she said. "Tell me why." Mr. Mike's voice cracked with anger. "You think you can just touch my baby? Feed him like you own him?" Sarah slowly stood up, her arms wrapped tightly around the baby. "He wasn't drinking the special baby milk, Mr. Mike. He kept pushing it away. He was getting really weak," she explained. "I used to be a baby nurse and I still have milk. He started drinking it. He needed it. I don't care what he needed." Mr. Mike took a step closer, making his hands into tight fists. "You don't get to decide that." Sarah's voice became a little stronger. "I did what any mommy would do," she said. "You're not his mommy." Alex started crying even louder now, reaching his little hands back toward Sarah. Mr. Mike squeezed his jaw tight. "Get out. You're fired." "No," Sarah said, and Mr. Mike froze. "What did you say?" he asked. "I'm not leaving." Sarah looked him right in the eye. "Not until I know he's safe." "You went too far," Mr. Mike said, but then Sarah said, "Your wife asked me to come here." The room became completely silent. Mr. Mike's face lost all its color. "What?" he whispered. "Rebecca was my cousin." Sarah's voice didn't shake at all. "She made me promise before she passed away that I would protect him, that I would make sure he knew who he really was." Mr. Mike felt like the floor was wiggling under him. Rebecca cousin promise. All the secrets he had kept hidden for 5 months were rushing up. "You're lying," he yelled. "I'm not," Sarah said, gently moving Alex in her arms. She made a video message. "Before Alex was born, she knew something bad might happen, and she made me promise I wouldn't let you make him forget who he was." Mr. Mike's hands started to shake. Sarah walked toward the door and then stopped. "I made your wife a promise, Mr. Mike," she said. "And I don't break promises to people who are gone." Then she was gone and Mr. Mike stood all alone in the baby's room, staring at nothing, his mind spinning like a top, his heart pounding, because deep down he knew she was telling the truth, and all the secrets he had been keeping were about to spill out. Mr. Mike stood alone in the nursery, staring at the empty rocking chair. His hands were still trembling. Down the hall he could hear Alex crying, that weak, tired sound that had become normal. He walked to the crib and picked up his son, trying to hold him close. But Alex wiggled and turned his face away, like Mr. Mike was a stranger. "It's okay," Mr. Mike whispered, his voice cracking. "Daddy's here." But the baby wouldn't calm down. He kept fussing, twisting in Mr. Mike's arms, reaching toward the door, toward Sarah, and something inside Mr. Mike felt broken. His son didn't want him. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door opened and his mom, Eleanor, stood there, still in her gardening clothes with dirt on her hands. She had heard everything. "I heard him laughing," she said quietly. "From the garden. I've been waiting 5 months to hear that sound." Mr. Mike didn't answer. Eleanor stepped closer, her eyes looking carefully at his face. "What did that woman do?" she asked. "She went too far," Mr. Mike mumbled. "What do you mean?" Eleanor asked. Mr. Mike turned away, still holding Alex. The baby was crying harder now, his tiny body shaking. "She said." Mr. Mike's throat felt tight. "She said she knew Rebecca." Eleanor froze. "What?" she asked. "She said Rebecca was her cousin. That Rebecca asked her to come here." The room felt cold. Eleanor's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mike, what aren't you telling me about Rebecca?" Before he could answer, there was a soft knock at the door. Sarah stood in the doorway. Her bag was over her shoulder, but she wasn't leaving yet. In her hand she held her phone. "Before I go," she said quietly, "there's something you need to see." She looked at Eleanor, then at Mr. Mike. "Your wife recorded this the day Alex was born." Sarah's voice trembled. "Hours before she passed away." Mr. Mike felt his chest sink. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Sarah stepped forward and placed the phone on the dresser. The screen was black, but Mr. Mike could see the time and date. 5 months ago, the day Rebecca died. She knew something was wrong, Sarah whispered. She knew she might not make it, so she left you a message. Sarah's finger hovered over the play button. She wanted you to know the truth. Then she pressed play, and Rebecca's face appeared on the screen, pale, tired, her hand resting on her big belly, and she began to speak. Rebecca's face filled the small phone screen. She looked so tired, her skin was pale, and her eyes were red from crying. But there was something else there too, a strong look. "Mike," she said softly, her voice weak. "If you're watching this, I'm gone." Mr. Mike's legs gave out, and he sank into the chair, still holding Alex. Eleanor moved closer, her hand covering her mouth. Rebecca took a shaky breath on the screen. "I need you to know some things I was too scared to say when I was alive." Her hand rested on her belly, rubbing slow circles. "I love you. I've always loved you. But I've also been scared of you." Mr. Mike's chest felt tight. "Not scared you'd hurt me," Rebecca continued, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Scared of how quiet you were. Scared of how you looked at me when I spoke my language. Scared of how small you made me feel when I wanted to call my mom." Eleanor gasped softly. "I agreed to hide who I was because I was young. Because I thought love meant giving up parts of myself." Rebecca's voice cracked. "But every year it got harder. Every time I lied to your family, every time I pretended to be someone else, I lost a piece of myself." Mr. Mike couldn't breathe. "When I got pregnant, I thought things would change. I thought you'd finally tell the truth. But you didn't." Rebecca wiped her eyes. 2 months into this pregnancy, I tried to leave, do you remember?" Mr. Mike's hand started trembling. "You begged me to stay. You promised you'd tell your dad. You promised you'd tell your family who I really am. Yoruba, Nigerian, African. You swore on our baby that things would be different." Rebecca looked directly into the camera, her eyes burning with both sadness and anger. "But you never did. And now I'm in this hospital bed. And the doctors keep using scary words like high risk. And I'm scared, Mike. Not of dying, but of disappearing." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If I don't make it, I need you to promise me something. Don't erase our son the way you erased me." Alex whimpered in Mr. Mike's arms. On the screen, Rebecca leaned closer, her face filling the whole screen. "His name is Alawazin. It means God has done this. It's the name I chose, the name I wrote down. Please don't take that from him." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I've asked my cousin Sarah to watch over him, to make sure he knows where he comes from, to make sure he hears my voice, even if I'm not there to speak." Rebecca's hand trembled as she reached toward the camera. "I forgive you, Mike, but our son deserves better. He deserves to be whole." The screen went black. The room fell silent. Mr. Mike sat frozen, tears streaming down his face. Eleanor was crying too, her hand pressed against the wall to keep herself steady. Sarah stood by the door watching them both. And then Eleanor turned to her son, her voice shaking with something Mr. Mike had never heard before. Pure anger. "Tell me you didn't do what I think you did." Eleanor's voice cut through the quiet like broken glass. "Tell me you didn't make her disappear." Mr. Mike couldn't look at her. He sat there holding Alex, his face wet with tears. "Mom, I don't." Eleanor's hand was shaking. "Don't you dare make excuses." She turned to Sarah. "How long have you known?" Sarah's voice was steady but soft. "Rebecca called me 6 months ago when she was 2 months pregnant. She was crying. She said she tried to leave, but Mike convinced her to stay." Eleanor closed her eyes. "She asked me to promise her something," Sarah continued. "If anything happened to her, I had to find a way into this house. I had to make sure Alex knew who his mother really was." Mr. Mike finally looked up, his voice breaking. "She cut ties with her family. She told me." "She told you what you wanted to hear," Sarah interrupted, her tone sharp now. "Because you made her choose between you and everyone she loved." Eleanor turned back to her son, her eyes blazing. "What was she, Mike? What did you make her hide?" The question hung in the air. Mr. Mike's throat closed up. He couldn't say it, couldn't admit it out loud, but Sarah said it for him. Rebecca was Nigerian, Yoruba. She was born in Lagos and grew up in London. She had a family, a mother, brothers, sisters, people who loved her. Sarah's voice cracked. People who begged her not to marry a man who was ashamed of her. Eleanor stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the dresser. You told me she was British. She was British, Mr. Mike said desperately. She grew up in London. She went to Cambridge. But she was Nigerian, Eleanor whispered. And you hid it. Mr. Mike looked down at Alex. The baby had stopped crying now, exhausted, his small chest rising and falling against Mr. Mike's. Dad would have stopped giving me money, Mr. Mike said, his voice barely audible. The company would have gone out of business. I had big deals, everything was on the line. So you chose money. Eleanor's voice was hollow now, empty. You chose your father's approval over your wife's true self. Mr. Mike didn't answer. Eleanor walked to the window, staring out at nothing. Did her family come to the funeral? Silence. Mike, did they come? No. Why not? Because, Mr. Mike's voice broke completely, because they didn't know she was dead. Not until weeks later. Eleanor spun around, her face twisted in horror. You didn't tell them? Sarah stepped forward, pulling something from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. That's not all he did, she said quietly. She handed the paper to Eleanor. It was a birth certificate. Eleanor's hands trembled as she read it. Her eyes moved across the page, then stopped wide with shock. Alex James Harris, she whispered. Then she looked at Mr. Mike, her voice barely a breath. Where is Alawazin? Mr. Mike's face crumpled, and Sarah's voice came soft but cold. He erased it. The day Rebecca died while she was unconscious in the hospital, he changed the baby's name, faked her signature on the papers. Eleanor dropped the paper. Her hand flew to her chest, and outside, gravel crunched in the driveway. A car door slammed shut. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, then at Mr. Mike. Rebecca's family just landed in Seattle, she said. They're on their way here. Mr. Mike stood up slowly, still holding Alex. His legs felt weak. How long have they known? He asked. Sarah looked at him, her expression unreadable. About me being here 3 weeks. About Rebecca being dead 5 months. But they've been watching you longer than that. The words hit like heavy stones. Watching me. Rebecca's mother hired a lawyer 2 months after the funeral. They've been building a case. Sarah's voice was calm, just stating facts. Emotional neglect, cultural erasure, fraud. Eleanor's face went pale. Fraud. Sarah nodded toward the birth certificate still lying on the floor. Forging a legal document, changing a child's name without the mother's permission while she was dying. She paused. That's a crime, Mrs. Harris. Mr. Mike felt the room tilt. They want custody, Sarah said quietly. At least shared custody. They want Alex to know his mother's family, to spend time in Nigeria, to learn Yoruba. She looked directly at Mr. Mike. To know his real name. Mr. Mike's arms tightened around Alex. Automatically. They can't take him. They're not trying to take him, Sarah said. They're trying to save him from becoming like you are. The words cut deeper than anything else she had said. Eleanor walked over and gently lifted Alex from Mr. Mike's arms. The baby went to her without fighting, resting his head against her shoulder. She looked at her son, and Mr. Mike saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Disappointment. You need to fix this, Eleanor said softly. How? Mr. Mike's voice cracked. How do I fix this? I don't know. Eleanor kissed Alex's head. But you better figure it out before they get here. Because if you fight them, Mike, if you try to keep that family away from this child, you'll lose and you'll deserve it. She walked toward the door, then stopped. Sarah, you'll stay in the big house tonight, in the guest room upstairs. Eleanor didn't wait for an answer. And Mike, you're going to sit down with Rebecca's family when they arrive. You're going to listen, and you're going to take whatever they have to say. Then she left, taking Alex with her. Sarah and Mr. Mike stood alone in the nursery. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Sarah picked up her bag. I should get settled. Sarah, Mr. Mike said, and she stopped. Did she? His voice was barely a whisper. Did Rebecca hate me? Sarah turned, and for the first time her expression softened just a tiny bit. No, she said. She said she loved you. That's what made it so hard. Then she walked out, closing the door behind her. Mr. Mike sank to the floor, his back against the wall. And for the first time in 5 months, he let himself feel all the things he had been hiding. The sadness, the shame, the heavy weight of what he had done. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Voices echoed through the house. Unfamiliar voices, speaking in a language Mr. Mike had spent years pretending he didn't understand. Rebecca's family had arrived. Mr. Mike heard them before he saw them, soft voices in the entryway speaking Yoruba. He stood at the top of the stairs, frozen. Eleanor's voice joined theirs, calm, saying, "Sorry. Please come in. I'm so sorry for your loss." Mr. Mike forced himself down the steps. 3 people stood in his front hall. An older woman in a deep purple dress, a headscarf framing her face. Rebecca's eyes looked back at him. Beside her, 2 men, one in glasses and a suit, the other younger, his jaw tight, his hands made into fists. The woman looked at Mr. Mike, and the world stopped. "Mr. Harris," she said quietly. Her accent was strong. "I am Faith Oladipo, Rebecca's mother." Mr. Mike couldn't breathe. "These are my sons, David and Charles." The younger one, Charles, didn't move, just stared at Mr. Mike with pure hatred. "Where is my grandson?" Faith asked. Eleanor stepped forward. "He's upstairs sleeping. I can let him rest." Faith's voice was gentle but firm. "We need to speak with Mr. Harris first." They moved into the living room. Mr. Mike felt like his legs would give out. Faith sat, her back straight, her hands folded. Her son stood behind her like guards. 5 months, she said softly. "My daughter has been gone for 5 months and you never called." Mr. Mike's mouth went dry. "I didn't know how to." "You didn't want to," Charles snapped. "You wanted to keep pretending she had no family." "Charles," Faith's tone was firm and he went silent. She looked back at Mr. Mike. "My daughter called me the night before Alex was born. She was so scared. She said if something happened to her, you would erase everything." Mr. Mike's chest tightened. "I told her she was wrong," Faith continued, her voice cracking slightly. "I told her you loved her." She paused. She said, "Mama, he loves me, but he's ashamed of me, and shame is stronger than love." The words hit him like a punch. David leaned forward. "We're not here to fight, Mr. Harris, but we need to know something." He paused. "Can you love a child who looks like us? Who carries our blood?" Mr. Mike stared at him, tears burning his eyes. "I don't know," he whispered. Faith reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. She slid it across the table. Mr. Mike's hand shook as he picked it up. Rebecca in beautiful Nigerian wedding clothes, bright coral and gold, fancy beads, smiling wide, surrounded by family, beautiful, glowing, alive. "That is who you erased," Faith said quietly. Mr. Mike couldn't look away from the photo. Upstairs, Alex started crying. Faith stood up immediately. "May I see him?" Eleanor nodded, and before Mr. Mike could stop her, Rebecca's mother walked toward the stairs. Charles leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You have 24 hours to decide, Mr. Harris. Either you make this right publicly, or we take you to court. What do you want?" Mr. Mike whispered. David's voice was calm but cold. His real name restored. "Our family and his life, and the truth told." Mr. Mike looked up. "And if I say no?" Charles's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make sure the world knows exactly what kind of man you are." Upstairs, the crying suddenly stopped. Faith's voice drifted down, soft singing in Yoruba. And then, cutting through the silence, Alex laughed. Mr. Mike's heart stopped. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale. "Mr. Harris," she said quietly, "there's something else you need to know." Mr. Mike's legs moved before his mind caught up. He climbed the stairs, his heart hammering in his chest. Sarah stepped aside as he reached the top. Through the open nursery door, he saw her. Faith sat in the rocking chair, holding Alex. The baby was snuggled against her chest, calm, peaceful, his tiny hand gripping her finger. She was singing softly the same song Sarah had sung. And Alex, his son, who never smiled, who barely looked anyone in the eye, was staring up at her face like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Mr. Mike's throat closed. Faith looked up and saw him standing in the doorway. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't stop singing. When the lullaby ended, she spoke, still in Yoruba, her voice gentle. Alex made a happy sound, actually responding to the sound. Mr. Mike felt something crack inside his chest. "He knows," Sarah whispered beside him. babies remember sounds from when they were in their mommy's tummy. Rebecca must have sung to him every day while she was pregnant. Mr. Mike's vision blurred. Faith pressed her lips to Alex's forehead, tears sliding down her cheeks. Then she spoke in English, her voice breaking. My daughter sang this to you when you were inside her every night. She wanted you to know her voice. She looked up at Mr. Mike. Even if she never got to hold you. Mr. Mike gripped the door frame to keep himself steady. Eleanor appeared behind him, her hand gently touching his shoulder. But Mr. Mike couldn't move, couldn't speak. Faith stood slowly, still holding Alex. She walked toward Mr. Mike, and for a moment he thought she was going to hand him the baby, but she didn't. Instead, she looked him in the eye. My daughter died believing you would protect him, she said quietly. But you didn't protect him. You tried to make him invisible just like you made her. The words cut deeper than anything Mr. Mike had ever felt. Mrs. Oladipo, I don't. Do you know what preeclampsia is, Mr. Harris? Mr. Mike blinked, confused by the sudden change of topic. It's a pregnancy problem, she continued, her voice steady now. Caused by stress, by fear, by a body that feels unsafe. Mr. Mike's blood went cold. The doctors told me Rebecca's health got worse because of emotional distress. Faith's grip on Alex tightened slightly. She was carrying the heavy feeling of hiding who she was, of cutting off her family, of living in fear that you would leave her if she asked for too much. Mr. Mike felt his knees get wobbly. So when you ask yourself why my daughter is gone, Faith said, her voice like steel. Remember this. She died trying to be small enough for you to love. The room spun. Eleanor gasped behind him, and downstairs the doorbell rang. Sarah pulled out her phone, looked at the screen, then looked at Mr. Mike. That's the lawyer, she said quietly. Rebecca's family brought legal papers. They want you to sign them tonight. Mr. Mike looked at Faith, still holding his son. What papers? David appeared at the top of the stairs, a folder in his hand. Custody agreement, he said simply. Shared legal custody. Alex spends summers in Lagos. Mandatory learning about his culture, and his name legally changed back to Alex Olawazen Harris. He held out the folder. You have 1 hour to decide. Mr. Mike stared at the papers. 1 hour to choose between being in charge and telling the truth, between the life he'd built on lies and the son he barely knew. Faith turned back toward the nursery, still holding Alex. And Mr. Harris, she said without looking back. If you say no, we will take this to court and we will win. The nursery door closed softly behind her, and Mr. Mike stood in the hallway, staring at the folder in David's hands. Downstairs voices echoed. The lawyer had entered the house. The clock was ticking. Mr. Mike sat alone in his office, the folder unopened on his desk. 1 hour. The house was silent now. Too silent. He could hear voices downstairs. Rebecca's family speaking with the lawyer, Eleanor's quiet answers, Sarah moving through the hallway. But up here it was just him and the heavy weight of everything he'd done. He opened his desk drawer. Inside was a small box he hadn't touched in months. Rebecca's wedding ring, her diary, a small USB stick labeled for Alex. His hand shook as he picked up the diary. He'd read it once the night she died, then locked it away because the words were too painful. But now he opened it again. The pages were filled with her handwriting, neat, careful, heartbreaking. Month 3. I wonder if our baby will have my mother's laugh. Mike says he wants him to look like me, but I don't think he means all of me, just the parts he can show people. Mr. Mike's throat tightened. Month 5. I tried to leave today, packed a bag, called Mama. But Mike cried. He begged. He promised things would change. And I believed him because I wanted to. Because I'm tired of being angry. Because love shouldn't feel this lonely. His chest ached. Month 7. I asked him again about telling his father. He said, soon. He always says soon. I'm starting to realize soon means never. Mr. Mike's vision blurred. Month 8. The doctors say I'm high risk. They keep using words like problems and stress. They asked if I have support at home. I lied. I said yes. But the truth is I've never felt more alone. I'm carrying a child in a house that doesn't want me, and I'm scared not of dying, but of him growing up the way I lived. Hidden, erased, ashamed. Mr. Mike closed the diary, his hands trembling. She knew. She had known all along what he was doing to her, and she had stayed anyway. A soft knock broke the silence. Eleanor stepped inside, her face tired and sad. "They're waiting," she said quietly. Mr. Mike didn't move. Eleanor sat down across from him. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Her voice was firm but not mean. "You've always known. You're just afraid of what it'll cost you." Mr. Mike looked up at her. "What if I lose everything?" "You already did," Eleanor said. "The moment Rebecca died, and you decided to keep lying." The words settled over him like ashes. "She loved you, Mike. Despite everything, she loved you." Eleanor's voice cracked. "But love isn't enough when the person you love makes you disappear." Mr. Mike's head dropped into his hands. "I didn't mean to." "I know." Eleanor reached across the desk and touched his hand. "But meaning well doesn't fix the harm. And that baby upstairs deserves better than your fear." Footsteps approached. David appeared in the doorway. "Time's up, Mr. Harris," he said. "What's your answer?" Mr. Mike stood slowly, his legs shaky. He looked at the folder, at the diary, at his mother's face. Then he picked up the papers. "I need to see him first," Mr. Mike said quietly. "I need to see my son." David stepped aside. Mr. Mike walked down the hall toward the nursery. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely breathe. He opened the door. Faith sat in the rocking chair, still holding Alex. The baby was asleep now, his small face peaceful against her chest. She looked up at Mr. Mike, and for the first time he didn't see anger in her eyes. He saw sadness. "He looks like her," Mr. Mike whispered. "He is her," Faith said softly. "Every part of him." Mr. Mike took a step closer. "I'm sorry for everything, for what I did to Rebecca, for what I've done to him." Faith studied him for a long moment. "Sorry is the beginning," she said. "But it's not enough." She stood and walked toward him. Then slowly she placed Alex in his arms. Mr. Mike held his son, really held him for the first time in weeks. And Alex, this tiny child who had pushed him away for so long, didn't pull away. He just breathed small, steady breaths. "His name is Alawazen," Faith said. "It means God has done this. Rebecca chose it because she believed this child was a gift, even when everything else was falling apart." Mr. Mike's tears fell onto Alex's blanket. "I'll sign the papers," he whispered. Faith nodded. But then she said something that made Mr. Mike's blood run cold. "There's one more thing you need to know before you do." Mr. Mike looked at Faith, still holding Alex. "What do you mean?" Faith walked to the window, her back to him. "Rebecca didn't just record one video." Mr. Mike's stomach dropped. "There were 3, she continued quietly. "One for you, one for Alex, and one for me." She turned around, her eyes filled with something Mr. Mike couldn't name. "In mine, she told me something she never told you." Faith's voice trembled. "She said if she died, you would try to keep us away. That you would fight to stay in control. That your pride would be stronger than your love." Mr. Mike felt his knees weaken. "But she also said something else." Faith stepped closer. She said, "Mama, if Mike ever changes, if he ever truly sees what he's done, forgive him because God already has." The words pierced through Mr. Mike like light through darkness. "I don't deserve that," he whispered. "No," Faith agreed. "You don't. But my daughter believed in kindness. She believed people could change." Her voice softened. "I'm here because of that belief, not because I think you've earned it." Mr. Mike looked down at Alex, sleeping peacefully in his arms. "What do I do?" His voice broke. "How do I fix this?" "You start by telling the truth," Faith said. "All of it. To your father, to your business friends, to the world." Mr. Mike's chest tightened. "My father will." "I don't care what your father will do." Faith's tone hardened. "My daughter lost everything to make you comfortable. Now you have to choose. Your father's approval or your son's heart." The room fell silent. Downstairs, voices rose slightly. The lawyer was speaking with David. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. "They're ready for you." Mr. Mike looked at his mother, then at Faith, then down at Alex. The baby stirred, his small hand reaching up, touching Mr. Mike's face. And for the first time in 5 months, Alex didn't pull away. He just held on. Mr. Mike's tears fell freely now. "I'll sign," he said. But I need to do something first. Faith raised an eyebrow. What? Mr. Mike walked to the dresser and pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking as he opened his contacts. He found his father's name, stared at it, then pressed call. It rang once, twice. Mike. His father's voice was sharp, businesslike. I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk about the big meeting next week. Dad, Mr. Mike interrupted. His voice steady despite his trembling body. I need to tell you something about Rebecca. Silence on the other end. She wasn't just British. She was Nigerian Yoruba. I hid it from you, from everyone. Mr. Mike's voice didn't shake now. I made her hide who she was because I was afraid of what you'd think, what you'd do. The silence stretched longer. And tomorrow, Mr. Mike continued, I'm holding a press conference. I'm telling the truth about her, about me, about everything I did. His father's voice came back cold. You do that and I pull all my money. You'll lose the company. Mr. Mike looked at Alex, then at Faith. Then I lose it, he said quietly, and he hung up. The room was dead silent. Eleanor's hand covered her mouth. Faith stared at him, her expression unreadable. Sarah appeared at the door, her eyes wide. The lawyer wants to know if you're ready to sign, she said softly. Mr. Mike nodded. I am. But as he moved toward the door, Faith's voice stopped him. Mr. Harris, there's something else. Mr. Mike turned. Faith pulled a small envelope from her bag. Rebecca asked me to give this to Alex on his first birthday. But I think you need to see it now. She handed it to Mr. Mike. On the front, in Rebecca's handwriting, it said, For my son, if his father finally becomes brave. Mr. Mike's hand shook as he opened it. Inside was a single photo. Rebecca, 8 months pregnant, standing in front of a mirror, her hand on her belly, tears streaming down her face, and on the back written in her handwriting. Tell him I loved his father. Tell him I forgave him. And tell him that love, real love, is braver than shame. I hope his father learns that before it's too late. Mr. Mike collapsed into the chair, clutching the photo to his chest. And somewhere deep inside him something broke open, not with pain but with a warm light. Downstairs the lawyer called up. Mr. Harris, we need your signature. Mr. Mike stood, wiping his face. He looked at Faith, at Eleanor, at Sarah. I'm ready. But as they walked toward the stairs, Alex, still in Eleanor's arms now, reached out toward Mr. Mike and spoke his first word. Dada. The word was soft, a little unclear, but you could definitely tell what it was. Alex reached toward Mr. Mike, his small hand opening and closing. Mr. Mike's breath caught in his chest. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she gently placed Alex in his father's arms. And this time Alex didn't fuss, didn't pull away. He just rested his head against Mr. Mike's chest, like he'd finally found something he'd been looking for. Faith watched from the doorway, her hand over her heart. He forgives faster than we do, she said softly. 3 days later, Mr. Mike stood in front of a room full of newspaper and TV reporters. His hands were shaking. His father hadn't spoken to him since the phone call. 2 important people from his company had already quit, but Eleanor sat in the front row, Sarah beside her, and in the second row David and Charles holding Alex. Mr. Mike looked down at the paper in his hands, the speech he'd written and rewritten many times. Then he folded it and put it aside. My name is Mike Harris, he began, his voice a little shaky. And I need to tell you about my wife. The room went silent. Rebecca Oladipo Harris was Nigerian Yoruba. She was smart, kind, and stronger than I ever gave her credit for. His voice cracked. And for 3 years I made her hide who she was. I was ashamed, not of her, but of what people would think, what my father would think. He paused, swallowing hard. 5 months ago, Rebecca died giving birth to our son. And in the days after, I erased every single thing about her culture from our home. I even changed our son's name without her permission because I was still too afraid to let the world see the truth. Cameras flashed, reporters wrote notes quickly. Our son's name is Alex Olawezen Harris. Olawezen means God has done this. It's the name Rebecca chose, the name I tried to steal from him. Mr. Mike looked directly at the camera. I'm telling you this because my son deserves to know his mother, all of her. And because hiding who you love is the same as hiding love itself. His voice broke completely now. Rebecca believed people could change. She believed in kindness, even when I didn't deserve it. Tears streamed down his face. I'm standing here today because a woman I hurt gave me a second chance. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. The room was completely silent. Mr. Mike looked at Faith. She nodded, her eyes wet. I've signed shared custody with Rebecca's family. Alex will grow up knowing both his American and Nigerian family history. He'll speak English and Yoruba. He'll know his grandmother, his uncles, his culture. Mr. Mike's voice became steady. And I'll spend every day making sure he knows his mother's voice, not through me, but through the people who loved her first. 6 months later, Mr. Mike stood in the backyard, watching Alex take his first wobbly steps across the grass. Eleanor clapped. Sarah cheered. And on the video call propped on the patio table, Faith's face filled the screen, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her grandson walk for the first time. Alawazin, she called out in Yoruba. You're doing it. Alex laughed, that pure, joyful sound Mr. Mike had heard only once before, 6 months ago in the nursery. But now it came freely, often. Mr. Mike had lost his father's money, lost 2 business partners, but he'd gained something much, much more valuable. He'd gained his son. Alex stumbled and fell into Mr. Mike's arms. Mr. Mike caught him, lifting him up, kissing his forehead. I've got you, Mr. Mike whispered. And Alex, 11 months old now, babbling in both English and Yoruba, patted his father's face and smiled. Sarah walked over, holding her phone. The foundation's first scholarship just went through. 5 Nigerian students, all their school paid for at American universities. The Rebecca Alawazin Harris Foundation had started 3 months ago with everything Mr. Mike had left after his father stopped supporting him. Mr. Mike looked at the sky, clear blue, endless. She'd be proud of you, Eleanor said softly beside him. I hope so, Mr. Mike whispered. On the screen, Faith spoke in Yoruba, then English. She is proud, and so am I. Mr. Mike felt something shift in his chest, not sadness this time but peace. Because he'd finally learned what Rebecca had tried to teach him all along. That love isn't about making someone small enough to fit into your world. It's about making your world big enough to hold all of who they are. Alex reached for the phone screen, babbling at his grandmother, and Faith sang the same lullaby Rebecca had sung when she was pregnant. Alex's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands, and Mr. Mike realized this was what healing looked like. Not perfect, not without pain, but real. Thank you, Mr. Mike said to Sarah, to Eleanor, to Faith on the screen. Don't thank us, Faith said gently. Thank God. He's the one who wouldn't let my grandson disappear. Mr. Mike nodded, holding Alex close because she was right. God had used a helper, a mother, and a dying woman's promise to save a child from being erased.